The alarm sounded at its usual time, 6 a.m., and my wife Anita and I rose to begin our day. As I sat up on the edge of the bed and swung my feet to the floor, an audible groan escaped me. "What's the matter?" "You sound like an old man," she teased on her way to the bathroom. Feeling like an old man after the events of the previous night, I heard her laughter echoing from the bathroom as I reminisced about our passionate lovemaking. The evening had concluded with a particularly sensual act. Today marked the beginning of her week-long business trip, leaving me alone at home, a prospect I wasn't eagerly anticipating. The sound of the shower running tempted me to join her, but the memories of the previous night's exertions convinced me otherwise. When she returned to the bedroom, her mood was upbeat, contrasting with my self-pitying state. She encouraged me to rise and start the day, saying, "Come on, old man, get up and get going. We need 2 breadwinners to pay the mortgage on this place." With a nod, I replied, "All right, I'm moving," and stumbled into the bathroom to begin my morning routine. Later, we gathered downstairs for breakfast before she departed for the airport, and I made my way to work. Anita, an attorney, and I both worked at a medium-sized manufacturing plant in St. Louis. She specialized in negotiations and traveled with teams off-plant. This trip involved negotiating a new subcontract with a major aerospace firm in Denver. She traveled several times a year for similar negotiations, typically gone at least a week each time. At 35, she had graduated cum laude from the State University 12 years ago. Standing at 5 feet 4 inches, weighing 125 pounds with measurements of 34-24-35, she was a striking presence. I'm Jack Fillmore, 37, working as an engineer in the same company as my wife. Standing at 6 feet 1 inch and weighing 165 pounds, I work out to stay in shape. We both enjoyed playing golf and often formed a foursome with friends. We met at a company picnic, and it was love at first sight for me. It seemed the same for her, as after a whirlwind courtship, we got married 6 months later. We've been married for 7 years now and just bought the house we're living in 3 months ago. It was the home where we planned to start our family, and Anita was going off her birth control pills upon her return from this trip. We were thrilled about having a family, and she intended to be a stay-at-home mom until the kids started school. Our parents, living in the area, were also anticipating our family expansion. After breakfast, I loaded Anita's travel bag into her car and gave her a goodbye kiss. Tears welled up in her eyes as she got into her car to leave. I expressed my hope that soon she wouldn't be traveling, so we wouldn't have to go through these goodbyes. She shared her dislike for goodbyes, and I reassured her that I felt the same way. I mentioned that I would see her on Friday evening, and we could have takeout so she could rest. She agreed, saying, "Sounds good. Bye." I observed as she backed out of the garage and into the street, waving as she left. I trudged into the house to complete my preparations for leaving for the office. Arriving at the workplace, I ascended to the engineering department, grabbed a cup of coffee from the break room, and headed to my desk. Barely settling in, my phone rang. I identified myself to the caller as Fillmore. My boss Evan asked me to come into his office. I agreed, picked up my coffee, and made my way to his office. Evan mentioned that he recalled me mentioning last Friday that Anita would be traveling this week. He then presented an opportunity. Gil Hawkins, our field service engineer in California, was sick and unable to handle a problem a customer in San Jose was having with one of our models. Given my experience with that model, Evan asked if I would like to head out to San Jose and check it out. I agreed, stating that there wasn't much happening at the office and I was batching it this week. Evan instructed me to get Kathy to arrange my reservations and tickets and to call the customer to let them know I was coming and find out the problem. Feeling more enthusiastic about life, I stopped by Evan's secretary Kathy's desk and informed her about my flight and reservation needs. Later, I called the customer from my desk to understand their problem before heading home to pack. On the way home, a plan formed in my mind. If I finished quickly, I could surprise my wife with a stop in Denver on my way home. The thought of spending a couple of days with her in Denver was becoming increasingly exciting. While waiting for my flight at the airport, I attempted to call Anita's cell phone, but she didn't answer. So I left a voicemail indicating I'd be staying at my folks for a couple of days and to reach me on my cell during the evenings. Everything worked out fine. I was at the customer's location Tuesday morning, made the necessary equipment adjustments, and had it checked out and running satisfactorily by the afternoon. Returning to my hotel, I called the airline and secured a flight that would get me to Denver at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Checking out of the hotel in San Jose, I headed to the airport in San Francisco, where I had dinner. While eating, Anita called me on my cell, and we chatted for a few minutes. She inquired about my folks, and I responded as though I were at their house. She mentioned that negotiations were progressing, but she was tired and planned a quiet evening in her hotel room. We bid our goodbyes with expressions of love, and after eating, I boarded my 9:45 p.m. flight. I checked in at the desk at Anita's Suite Hotel, and after verifying my identity, they provided me with a card for entry to her suite. Entering her suite quietly, I noticed a lamp illuminating the computer table, and her laptop was on it, closed. However, there was no sign of Anita. I placed my suitcase down and checked the bedroom and bathroom, finding them empty. I thought to myself that she probably hadn't returned to her room yet. I decided to sit down and wait, or perhaps go down and check the lounge to see if she was there. I then observed that the door to the adjacent room was slightly open. Approaching it, the door swung open silently on well-lubricated hinges. Surveying the living room in the adjoining suite, I found no one. Perplexed, I entered the room and suddenly heard a groan emanating from the bedroom. My gut tightened, and I broke into a sweat as I quietly approached the bedroom door. Although my heart may not have ceased, my breath certainly did. Witnessing the scene in the dimly lit room, Anita was unclothed, facing me, engaged with a man whose face remained unseen. My initial urge was to burst in, confront her, and confront the man, but reason prevailed over my emotions. Slowly backing away from the door, I returned to her suite, retrieving the digital camera from my travel bag brought along for souvenir pictures. I returned to the other bedroom door, turning off the flash and adjusting the camera for dim light photos. I calmly captured several images of the bed scene without their awareness. They were so engrossed in their activities that their eyes remained closed, oblivious to their surroundings. Before heading back to her suite, I examined an open briefcase on the table, finding a business card with the name Sam Harris, the chief negotiator for our company. I pocketed the card. Back in her suite, I utilized the camera-computer interface cable I had with me to connect the camera to her laptop. Since our laptops had the same photo program, I easily downloaded a picture from my camera and set it as her desktop background. I then packed my camera into my travel bag and left her suite quietly. Before departing, I heard her cry out in climax. I nearly broke down right there, but pressed on towards the elevator. After returning the entry card to the desk, I contacted the airline to inquire about the next flight back to St. Louis. Luckily, a 6 a.m. flight was available, promising a 9 a.m. arrival home. With some luck, I calculated, this would coincide with the time Anita would be opening her laptop at the negotiating table. She would then realize she had been caught, signaling the end of our marriage. Returning to the airport, I checked into a nearby motel where sleep eluded me. I kept replaying the distressing scene from her hotel bedroom. I wept, allowing my pain to manifest in tears. By the time I left the motel at 5 a.m., I had exhausted my tears, resolved to conclude our marriage swiftly. Upon arriving in St. Louis, my cell phone began to ring. As I entered my car and checked the caller, I saw it was Anita. I turned it off and headed home. Upon entering the house, the phone was ringing, but checking the caller ID revealed it was Anita again. Letting it go to the answering machine, I heard her sobbing on the phone. She pleaded with me to call her right away, expressing that she needed to talk with me and it was important. I ignored her tearful plea, changed my clothes, rented a U-Haul, and returned home to start packing. If my calculations were correct, she would arrive around 4 p.m., and I aimed to be out of the house by then. It took a couple of hours, but I successfully moved all my personal belongings to a rental storage unit. Before packing, I contacted our lawyer and scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. After unloading my belongings at the storage Unit, I met with our lawyer and requested the initiation of divorce proceedings. While tempted to cite infidelity as the cause, I opted for incompatibility, reserving the infidelity accusation in case she contested the divorce. I also requested him to draft a new will, designating my brother as a beneficiary. Making a stop at the bank, I moved half of our savings and checking balance to new accounts solely in my name. Subsequently, I contacted my investment advisor to perform a similar transfer for our accounts with him. With a heavy heart, I drove to my parents' house, carrying my suitcase with me. I entered through the open door, and my mother, spotting me first, exclaimed loudly, "Jack, where have you been? Anita has been calling here several times looking for you. Did you inform her that you were staying here?" My retired father joined us, and I sat down to explain everything to them. They were astonished when I revealed Anita's infidelity and the end of our marriage. I inquired if I could stay with them for a few days until I found a furnished apartment, and they agreed. My calculations seemed fairly accurate because around 6 p.m., as we were sitting down to eat, the doorbell rang. My dad answered it, and a moment later, he returned with Anita, looking visibly distressed. She questioned why I hadn't answered her calls, expressing the need to talk. She noted that I had moved all my stuff out of the house and assumed the message left on my desktop would provide the necessary information. I responded, expressing my fears that it was her and suggesting that we go somewhere to talk. I firmly stated that I was no longer her sweetheart and had nothing to discuss. Divorce proceedings had already begun, and anything that needed to be conveyed could go through our lawyers. I explained that what I witnessed in Denver had destroyed any feelings I had for her and requested her to leave so I could finish my dinner. She pleaded, and I reiterated that there was nothing to talk about. Without addressing the infidelity, I mentioned having pictures and that I planned to confront her lover Sam the following day. She tearfully insisted on talking. I responded, suggesting that she leave as my dinner was getting cold. I proposed that she write me a letter articulating how she could rationalize breaking her wedding vows. I assumed that as a smart lawyer, she could explain how it was all my fault and that she could still love and respect me very much. With a sob, she turned away. Before reaching the door, she turned back and pleaded again. I said goodbye, and after she left, still crying, my parents remained stunned. My mom commented on the harshness of my response. I retorted, sharing the harsh reality of her actions and my inability to trust her again. I questioned whether she wanted me to give her grandchildren from a woman like that. My dad suggested that with time, my perspective might change. I replied, expressing doubt, and suggesting we talk about something else so I could digest my food. That Monday morning when I left home, I was feeling sorry for myself, having to leave Jack. But I thought how wonderful it would be when I got back, and we could start our family. We'd waited this long to make sure we were set financially and career-wise to begin being parents. Now everything was almost in place. The journey to Denver was uneventful. I sat next to Sam Harris, our chief negotiator, and we briefly discussed the upcoming negotiations and our families. Sam, who had been married for 20 years with 2 high school-aged children, knew that I planned to quit work upon pregnancy, and he expressed that he would miss me. Sam and I, a negotiating team since before my marriage, had a comfortable rapport. The other 2 team members conversed behind us. Upon reaching the Denver hotel, we checked into our rooms, with Sam and I opting for adjoining rooms as usual. Originally intended for late-night strategy sessions, this arrangement evolved about 10 years ago when our relationship took a physical turn. We convinced ourselves that it was a stress relief mechanism after challenging negotiations, and at the time, we considered it not cheating on his wife if it contributed to our professional collaboration. After Jack and I got married, I refrained for a couple of years due to guilt. However, during an especially demanding negotiation, Sam proposed resuming our arrangement to relieve stress, and I reluctantly agreed. It became a habit again, with the thrill of secrecy boosting my libido at home, benefiting Jack and lessening my guilt. On the first night of this trip, we didn't meet as I felt tired after dinner. However, after the initial day of negotiations, I agreed to meet him the following night. The next morning, upon opening my laptop, I was shocked by what I saw on the screen. Sam, sitting next to me, quickly closed the lid, and we took the laptop to the hallway. He was furious, demanding to know what kind of content I had on my desktop. I responded that I didn't know and explained that it wasn't there the last time I used it. Still in shock, I suggested checking it again. Upon reopening it, we both looked at the picture, and Sam exclaimed that it was me. I questioned how it could be me, but he insisted, adding that it was probably him under me, although my face couldn't be seen. I asked if he had left the laptop unattended at any point the previous day. He denied it, saying that it was with him during the trip and in his suite while he was in mine. I wondered if anyone could have accessed my room with a camera, but he didn't think so, stating that the door was closed and he assumed it was locked. I advised him to get back to the hotel and check if anyone had been given access to his room the previous night. I assured him that I would handle things on my end and asked him to reach Jack to find out where he was last night. He expressed doubt, saying it couldn't have been Jack, as he spoke with him at his folks' place. I asked if he had called Jack on his parents' phone, to which he replied that Jack had asked him to call on his cell phone. Worried about the situation, I mentioned that I didn't like the sound of it, as Jack could have been anywhere during their conversation. I instructed him to call me on my cell if he found out anything and urged him to do whatever he could to manage the fallout from this. I told him to take a cab back to the hotel and said goodbye. Feeling anxious, I considered the possibility that Jack had taken the picture and placed it on my laptop. It seemed like a message that our marriage was over. I needed to return to the hotel to gather information. The receptionist arranged a cab, and 15 minutes later, I was back, checking the front desk to see if anyone accessed my suite. The clerk confirmed that a Mr. Jack Fillmore received a card at 9:45 the previous evening and returned half an hour later. At that moment, I knew my marriage was likely over. The man I loved more than anything had disappeared. Despite the heartbreak, I felt compelled to fight for him. Entering my suite, I immediately tried to reach him on his cell and at work. No answer on his cell, it had been turned off, leaving an important voice message. He called me back soon. His work secretary informed me he was on a business trip to California, expected back tomorrow. That was it. He had gone to California and stopped on his way back to surprise me. I guess we were both surprised. Calling his folks, they hadn't seen him for several days. I asked them to have him call me. No answer at home, but I left a message there too. Alone in the suite, I cried, realizing I had no way to talk to him unless I went home. So I picked up the phone, made reservations for the next flight to St. Louis, and after packing, I informed Sam of the situation. He was quiet before speaking. Sam mentioned that it seemed we were both facing divorce, or worse. He pointed out the company's policy against managerial employees fraternizing, highlighting the potential risk of both of us being fired, which would not look good on our records. He expressed concern about losing Jack and acknowledged that losing his family would be bad too. He advised me to get back to St. Louis and find Jack, urging me to see if he would listen to reason. He informed me that he had made reservations for a flight leaving at noon, scheduled to be back by 4:30. For his sake, he emphasized the importance of finding Jack and talking to him. Sam mentioned that he would let me know how it goes and explained that he had to stay there until negotiations were finished. He assured me that he would be waiting to hear from me. We said our goodbyes. Picking up my bag and laptop, I hurried down to the lobby, checked out, and took the hotel limo to the airport, praying all the way back to St. Louis. I hoped to get Jack to talk to me. I had to explain it was just closeness and did not affect him at all. I had to stake everything on the hope that he could be unemotional about my infidelity and accept it for what it was, nothing but meaningless closeness. Arriving back home, nothing seemed out of place at first. However, entering our bedroom and finding all his belongings gone made me realize he knew and had left me. I had to find him. After many fruitless phone calls, I decided to go to his folks' house to see if he was there or if they had an idea where he was. He was at his folks', and the reception I received from him made me nauseous in its unfeeling brutality. He informed me he was in the process of filing for divorce, had no desire to talk, and nothing I could say would change his mind. After sarcastically suggesting I write a long letter explaining my position, I left and sat in my car crying. The family we had planned would never happen. Growing old together and enjoying grandchildren together felt like an unattainable dream. From a selfish viewpoint, what grieved me even more was the thought that by the time I found another husband, I might be too old to conceive. Eventually, I started the car and returned to our vacant house. Following a restless night haunted by visions of Anita and Sam together, I rose early and descended to my folks' home, brewing coffee, retrieving my laptop and camera. I proceeded to download the camera pictures into the computer, aiming to identify Sam. Examining the pictures, Sam's face remained unclear. However, I noticed something on his right arm reaching towards Anita's chest. Upon closer inspection, I identified a tattoo, a heart with the word Marie on it. Sam's wife was Marie. That's all I needed. I returned upstairs, showered, and prepared for work. When I came back down, my mother was up, preparing breakfast. Later at work, I burned a couple of CDs with the pictures I had taken and a blow-up of Sam's tattoo. I printed several sets and organized them in a folder before walking to our human resources department. I requested to see the manager, Phil, whom I knew from golf outings. Placing a set of pictures in front of him, I explained that the images might appear inappropriate, but they depicted my wife and Sam Harris. The date and time on them confirmed they were taken Tuesday evening in Sam's hotel suite in Denver during a company negotiation trip. Phil seemed visibly shocked and inquired about what he could do. I responded, suggesting that he could terminate both of them for cause under the anti-fraternization clause in their contract with the company. I pointed out that this clause had never been enforced before and questioned whether he was sure about pursuing this course of action. I mentioned that it would bring the affair out in the open and assumed that he was considering divorcing Anita over the matter. I informed him that I already had my lawyer drawing up the papers, but if he chose not to pursue it, I would bring suit against the company. Phil agreed, stating that he would take the matter to the legal department and get the ball rolling. He then prompted me to continue with the next point of discussion. I went in to see my boss, Evan, to inform him about the situation. He was appropriately horrified at what I had to tell him about my wife and Sam Harris. When I requested the rest of the week off as vacation time, he readily agreed. In parting, he congratulated me on a job well done during my trip to California. The customer praised the quick resolution of their problem and requested if I would consider taking over the California territory, given the current field engineer's retirement due to ill health. I mentioned that I'd consider it and provide an answer upon my return to work the following week. On my way out of Evan's office, Kathy, his secretary, informed me that my wife had been looking for me and would return later. I instructed Kathy not to let my wife see me under any circumstances and expressed that there was a significant problem as we were getting divorced, and she and Sam Harris were involved. I anticipated the news spreading throughout the plant by noon, considering Kathy's inclination for gossip. Returning to my desk, I called Marie Harris, Sam's wife, whom I knew from company picnics. I was aware that my revelations about our spouses could be challenging for her. I contacted Marie and explained the situation, expressing the need to talk as soon as possible. She agreed to meet and provided her address, and I agreed to visit her in 15 minutes. Upon arriving at the Harris's, I felt a sense of dread about disclosing the situation to Marie and her family. However, I believed Sam should face consequences, and Anita should not bear the entire fallout. Marie greeted me, offering coffee, which I accepted. I decided to get straight to the point. I disclosed the affair between Sam and Anita, my pursuit of a divorce from Anita, and my decision to have them both fired from their jobs. I mentioned that the information would soon become public knowledge and offered to show her photos as evidence. Observing her face, I was surprised at the lack of a significant reaction. Marie shared that she had suspected Sam's infidelity during company trips for years, but hoped it wasn't true. She acknowledged Sam's previous role as a loving husband and father. Marie expressed regret for both my marriage and her own situation. She considered the possibility of Sam being fired and the challenges he might face finding another well-paying job. She concluded by offering me a set of photographs if I wanted them. Marie expressed gratitude for sharing the photographs, stating that she would leave them for her to look at later when she could gather the strength. I apologized, explaining that I couldn't let the situation go, especially considering Anita and I were on the verge of starting a family. I emphasized the importance of trust and respect in a relationship, qualities I believed the mother of our children should possess. She acknowledged my decision and thanked me for informing her directly, expressing understanding about not wanting to hear it from other sources first. Marie extended her sympathy for my situation with Anita, anticipating her devastation and remorse when she found out about the affair. She wished it were a one-time incident, finding it easier to forgive, but believed it had been ongoing for years, making it harder to accept. Now that it was out in the open, Marie emphasized her pride and the need to hold her head up. I assured her that if there was anything I needed, I would let her know before leaving and heading back to my parents' house. It's been 6 months since I initiated divorce proceedings. I received my copy of the agreement dissolving my marriage to Anita this morning. I never talked with her or saw her again after the time she came to my parents' house. My lawyer handled it all. I gave her the heavily mortgaged house with the highly financed furniture and furnishings to release all claims on me. I also had my name taken off the mortgage. She assumed full responsibility for making the payments. Of course, without a job, she had to put it up for sale and lost her shirt on the deal. She attempted to contest the divorce, but I threatened to change the reason for divorce to infidelity and release the pictures of her and Sam to the internet if she didn't sign the papers in 48 hours. She signed them within the required time, and that is why I'm a free man today. I guess she decided that she didn't want me that bad anyway. She was terminated from her job, but she's a smart lawyer and negotiator, so she found another one within a month. Not making as much or with the benefits seniority brought her in her old job, but I hear she's getting by and dating again. Lots of luck to the boyfriend if she lands him. I wonder if she's told him about our divorce and the reason. Maybe I should enlighten him. Marie divorced Sam and took him to the cleaners financially. He found another job too after he was terminated, but he's struggling to make the alimony and child support payments with his new salary. I'm now living in Santa Maria, California, a quiet place near the coast about halfway between the Bay Area and LA. This positions me pretty well to cover both southern and northern parts of the state. I moved here about 4 months back and have an apartment in a complex with other singles and young couples, most trying to save money for a down payment on a house. Housing costs are high out here, and it takes big bucks to buy into the market. I have a steady girlfriend who lives in the same complex. She's divorced like me, but we're comfortable together, and I think we'll see how it goes in the future. With me traveling so much, I really need to trust the one I marry, but I need to make a move before too long if we want to start a family. Biological clocks keep on ticking.